I think Canada has lost its mind. It has extended its COVID-19 lockdowns. It has thrown a pastor in church. Now is thrown put a fence around a church, closed it down. Not a crazy radical church, not any of that stuff. Closed it down and then started arresting journalists who were covering the story. What is happening in Canada? Well, let's go to Ezra Levant. He is the founder of Rebel News. That's kind of like a Blaze up in Canada, and he hosts the Ezra Levant Show. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Glenn. I love Americans. One of the things I love about Americans is they care about freedom around the world. I know that you care about the freedom of people in Xinjiang, China, the Uyghur Muslims. I know you care about Christians in Iraq and other places in the Muslim world. But I sort of feel shy to say it. I think we might need some help up here in Canada. I know that sounds odd, but I sure would like it if you could help shine a light of scrutiny on what's going on up north here, because the troubles about religious freedom and press freedom, they're not just in faraway places now. They're just across the border. And I could tell you two crazy cases. The first is what you mentioned, the GraceLife Church. It's a very nice church outside Edmonton, Alberta. I visited it myself. Loving, peaceful, the friendliest folks. I tell you, if I wasn't Jewish, I'd go every week. Great people. And the pastor was sentenced to 35 days in a maximum security jail, because he wouldn't close his church. By the way, when he was in jail, the church kept open anyways. Another pastor presided.
And they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything to that pastor. They didn't do anything to the church.
No, and there was no need to. And by the way, there was never a single case in the church, let alone an outbreak. And everything was fine until one day they moved in at dawn. There was no one in the church. The police seized the church, occupied the church, and turned it into, well, the only way I can describe it is a paramilitary garrison, like a fort. They have a perimeter fence, and then within it they have another fence. They put up a big black tarp around it so you can't see what they're doing. They have police coming and going in shifts. These are heavily armed police. They also have lesser armed police. They brought their latrines in, and I think it's very disrespectful. They put them right outside the front door of the church, the bathrooms. So they're literally doing to the church what they're also figuratively doing. I wonder if they would defile a mosque in the same way. But they have turned this church into a garrison. Why? Because if they were to leave, the church members would just go back in. So they are a permanent occupation and militarization of GraceLife Church. I know you're thinking that can't be true. Well, there's plenty of video of it. So this weekend, obviously, it was Sunday, two interesting things happened. First of all, the church members met, but they did not meet at their church. They met at a second secret location, an underground church, like they do in China. So the actual congregants of GraceLife Church and their pastor did not go to their building. They went somewhere else. They believe that the church is with them. It's not a piece of bricks and metal and mortar.
Correct.
And so they're having an underground church, China style, but at the same time, almost 1,000 people not with the church went to the church in solidarity. Now, there were different approaches. Some of them were more angry, some were more peaceful, some prayed for the police, some shouted at the police. And there was a moment when some of the protesters knocked down the exterior fence. And by the way, some people affiliated with the church said, no, don't do that. We could have taken the church physically any time if we wanted to. We're not protesting a piece of metal. We're here for the right to pray. And so there was an interesting divergence in views. Should they physically retake the church or not? In the end, the fence went back up quickly, but not before a huge brigade of heavily armed SWAT-style police from the Mounties. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police came, gas masks, riot gear, basically stormtroopers. They were at a staging facility nearby. What are they going to do? Were they going to shoot people? It was so insane. So you have an underground church in hiding, a pastor conducting secret services out of the surveillance of police. You have a church being turned into an armed garrison, like a military base. You have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, close to 1,000 people protesting this. When some of them pressed against the fence and knocked it down, they dispatch, stormtroopers and looked heavily armed. That is Canada, and I happen to be from that province of Alberta. Its motto is strong and free. That's false advertising today, Glenn.
First of all, when did the Mounties lose their cool, horse and red jacket? Well,
that's the thing. Mounties are so beloved because they have such a great reputation going back more than a century. There was that old show. There was a show about a Mountie in the States, the fish out of water kind of show. I just forgot it. I mean, Mounties are beloved. They're friendly. It's like the British Bobby. Everyone loves the Mountie. But that's not the Mounties today. The Mounties today, they only wear their red jackets and ride their horses for fancy ceremonies. Today they were doing the dirty work of shutting down a church. I can't imagine that any young man grew up and said, I want to grow up and go to the police academy and get a shield and a badge and a gun and so I can, catch bank robbers, catch murderers, or expropriate and occupy a church and throw pastors in prison. That same prison, Glenn, they emptied out 400 violent offenders because they were worried they would catch COVID in the prison. I'm not making that up. 400 violent men were released from prison, but they put the pastor in that same prison for 35 days. That's Canada, and I don't want to seem alarmist, but I sure would love it if, Americans with a big footprint like Senator Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, people who talk about freedom in China or Cuba or Iran, boy, I'd love it if they would put out a statement about this. And can I tell you one more story from Montreal this weekend that I was personally at?
If it's about the media, I want you to hold on to that.
Sure, I'll hold on to that. It's crazy.
Okay.
One of our people was arrested yesterday.
Hang on just a second. I want to talk about that here in a second. I want to ask you one question on the media, and then I'll take a quick break. The mainstream, the CBC, are they even covering what's happening at this church?
They don't cover it often, and when they do, they cover it with aggressive criticism. They paint the church as criminals.
Radicals.
Radicals. They smear it as unhealthy, super spreaders, even though I say again, not one case, let alone an outbreak. This pastor obviously could have got out of jail in 1 minute, let alone 35 days. It was as if they gave him his own keys. All he had to do was lie and say, I won't go back to the church. Imagine a man who would endure 35 days of maximum security prison when he had his own keys. He endured that because he would not say a lie. The lie being, I won't go back to the church and I won't preach. He wouldn't say that. And that is the most gentle man, the most peaceful man, the most nonviolent man, the most self-abnegating man you'll ever find. And yet they demonize him. They call him a wacko, an extremist. They mock the church itself because it's not just that he's a dissident. It's that he obviously believes in a higher power than politicians. Mm-hmm. And if you are a lockdownist, if that's your superstition, I'm not even going to call it a religion. If you believe in lockdownism, if you wear a mask the same way a Muslim woman might wear a hijab or a Jewish man might wear a yarmulke, if the mask is your religious symbol, your symbol of submission to your philosophy of lockdownism, and now one mask or two masks, or the high priest wear three masks, and you have it. Like if you believe in that whole mindset, fine. But there are some people who believe in something higher than Anthony Fauci, and that's why people rage against churches and other institutions, of religious institutions that won't close, because they say, "Aha, you don't believe what I believe, and your resistance is an insult to my belief system." I think there's something to that, Glenn. I think it's nature abhors a vacuum, and this superstition has filled the void.
You know, Ezra, you're the type of mind that would enjoy, you should read the book Hitler's Monsters. It's a very scholarly book, but it talks about that Nietzsche was right. And once you killed God, what did the German people fill that vacuum with? And it goes in depth on a lot of the stuff that I think we're doing right now. And I'm talking religiously. You start to go into myths. You go into magic. I mean, it's nuts. And we're starting to repeat this and condemning the church and real believers and making them look like idiots, imbeciles, and radicals.